Good evening, artists to be. For those of us that are waiting right now, it's really exciting to be here. Thank you for joining me tonight. My name is Zach Caseberg, if you didn't know. And if you're here, it's because you wanted to join us for a little bit of a session tonight to learn just a bit about how to get better about studying for the exam. So I wanted to start by going through a little bit as we have a couple of folks still coming in. I wanted to take some time, introduce myself to you, give you a little idea of what kind of you're going to get out of this session tonight, and then we'll dive in and go into it. So, kind of to start us off here tonight, I'm a registered dietitian. I currently practice in Illinois. And when I took the RD exam, oh, maybe about I'd say 4 to 5 years ago, I kind of noticed that it was a difficult exam. And it was an exam that I really thought, hey, this was challenging for me, but I feel like that there's a great way and a great method in which I can go and help other students to do that. So I was just really excited to kind of have the opportunity, and I started doing things like podcasts. I started creating podcasts all the time, just trying to help students to learn more about the RD exam and give them some more familiarity with it. So, for instance, as I kind of figure out the new technology here, bear with me. Everyone I worked with was NPO. So naturally, I came up with this as a show name, and we went through that. Now, lately, a lot of you have been maybe following me on my new show, the RD Exam Ready podcast. And I just wanted to point that out that that's where I'm going to be doing all the new content, new podcasts. I just needed a refresh of some kind. So I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of get a refresh and give us a new idea as we kind of go through things here. So that's how I kind of got into the start of like podcasting. Oh, hear me. And then I had the great opportunity to go and work with an excellent company that offers some tutoring services for others studying for the RD exam. Many of you are very familiar with that company. There's some excellent RDs that work there. And now I'm just trying to do things on my own. So, what brings me here and what's my mission statement for you? Well, what I really want to do is I want to help all students to pass this exam in any way I can. And I've always found that the exam itself, it's very pricey. It's very expensive. We all know that, especially if we're multiple test takers. We've all experienced that. And then there's some of us that have purchased multiple resources all throughout the time. And it just never really sat with me well that you have to purchase and spend thousands and thousands of dollars to pass an exam and a credential that you've already paid thousands and thousands of dollars on. So I've never felt right about that. So I wanted to say, hey, if I can do these live sessions, if I can do podcasts, if I can somehow give back to the students, then I can help as many students as possible to pass this thing and really move on to being excellent dietitians. So that's my mission statement for you. And that's my goal for tonight. Tonight, we are going to be reviewing vitamins together. And I love talking about vitamins because, hey, as RDs, we naturally have to know about vitamins, vitamin deficiencies, how we get our different vitamins all the time. It's so important for our patients. And for as much as we talk about macronutrients, we really don't talk about micronutrients, folks. So, what I would like to do tonight is we're going to pull up just a slideshow and we're going to go through just vitamins. Okay. Just the vitamins today. So we're not going to go deep into minerals. I want to just start out with one little easy lesson a little bit to make sure we all had that down. Rules for the session. I don't really have a lot of rules. My only rules are be nice to each other, be kind, definitely be positive because we got to bring positivity when we're preparing for this exam, folks. If you bring negativity into it, it gets very difficult for you. It's hard to stay motivated. So you need to do yourself and do others a favor and just be positive when it comes to this thing. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the chat just in case there are questions, and I do want to encourage you ask me questions. If I'm not being clear or you want me to clarify something, post it in the chat. And if I miss it, I'll try to come back to that a little bit. We're going to go through vitamins. And then for those of us that are joining us, don't leave yet because we're also going to do some practice questions after that as well. So I put together a little quiz on these vitamins that we can talk about and review together. So I'm really excited to do that. If we have any time at the end of this hour, I'll leave some time just for some question and answer time if any of you would like it. But thank you again for being here. If you haven't, please subscribe to the YouTube channel just so you can see if I do some fresh content, fresh videos, fresh lessons for you. Please check out the RD Exam Ready podcast wherever you like to watch or listen to podcasts. I'm throwing them on YouTube too. So if you prefer that, do that. I'm on Instagram, RD Exam Ready, trying to do some practice questions every day. So all in all, if you can just help support me so that I can reach out to as many RDs to be, that'd be extremely helpful. Okay. All right. So we got a great 9 of us in here. So I'm so excited to dive in. Let's get into these vitamins and minerals together here. And I'm going to keep an eye on that chat. So remember, get what you want to out of this session. Okay. Very good. Very good. So, kind of starting out here. Good. We got our screen perfect there. Okay. So, with this, with our vitamins and minerals, we're just going to talk about the vitamins today, like I said. But with the vitamins, what I just want to start by pointing out is just saying that I have a series of these vitamins that we need to be familiar with here. And with these, we've got our fat soluble and water soluble vitamins. Okay. So, a couple different types that we need to be a little bit familiar with here is just making sure that we kind of know our list amongst these as we go. Okay. All right. Start out with vitamin A. Vitamin A being the first one. I wish this little window of my face wasn't here. That's a little annoying. But if I need to clarify that, that's okay. Manage. Sorry, folks. I just have this little window. Me. Okay. All right. So as I figure that out, let's get into this vitamin A. So vitamin A, also known as retinol. The metabolism of vitamin A goes like so. I've given you this a little bit in this box. So what happens is vitamin A is going to be digested, and then it is going to be passively absorbed in the jejunum. Remember, passive absorption. Well, can you all remind me, does passive absorption, does it require energy? Does it not require energy? Tell me a little bit about that if you would. What do you think, folks? What's with that passive and active transport? What are those different? Hmm. Does passive transport or passive diffusion, does it require energy? No, it doesn't. Passive means it just easily passes through that cell membrane. No problems there. Okay. It's then going to be transported with retinol binding protein. Retinol binding protein is what it's going to be transported with. And then it's going to go to the liver for storage. That's the basics of metabolism. If you need a key point to take from that, right here, transported with retinol binding protein. Very good. I see in the chat here, Priscilla 3820, absolutely active requires energy. Very good. Absolutely. And passive would not require energy. Good job. Now, the functions of vitamin A, I want you all to always think of your eyes. Okay. I want you to take this association on the test too. When vitamin A pops up, think of your eyes because vitamin A helps with sight and cell differentiation. This is why your grandparents always said to eat your carrots, right? It was because it helps with your eyes. Okay. That's what we've always been saying. That being said, what are going to be the sources that we need to be familiar with is going to be things like liver, milk, yellow and orange fruits and vegetables. Would be some other really good sources that we want to be familiar with there. Okay. I'm just going to pull this up a little bit since I got this little window of my head here. I just want to make sure everyone can read that. And I'll end up making sure this is available to people if you would like as well. Just need to make sure it fits so you can all see what's going on. All right. So for our deficiencies here, folks, when we have a deficiency of vitamin A, you can end up with nyctalopia. Okay, let's spell that out. Nyctalopia. Nyctalopia means night blindness. So that's what occurs with a vitamin A deficiency. Xerophthalmia is the other term that's going to happen, which is called dry eyes. Okay, xerophthalmia. Okay, xerophthalmia. Bitot spots is another one that's a good thing to look up. If you look up bitot spots, it's really interesting. It's just kind of these dark, dark circles, these dark spots that are in your eyes when you look at them very close. That is a result of a vitamin A deficiency here. And I know it's cut off towards the bottom, definitely annoying there. We'll get that figured out for future streams for sure. But hyperkeratosis, where your skin can grow very, very strong, thick, almost like a calloused layer. This could be another thing that can happen with a vitamin A deficiency. And remember, folks, if I'm not being clear on something or you want me to say something again, just drop it right into that chat and I will get to it. Okay. Even if it's just going to be a few minutes after, I'll try to swing back and get you back on that if we need to. Okay. All right. Hopefully, we're all feeling good on vitamin A first. It's a great one to start with, and usually one that are pretty familiar with here too. No. Excellent. I'm going to move on to vitamin D, and vitamin D should make you think of the bones. Bones is what we think of the most with vitamin D. Now, with vitamin D, it's going to be digested, passively absorbed into the jejunum, and it'll go to the liver for the first step of activation and the kidney for its second step of activation. See, vitamin D needs to go through a couple different steps to be fully in its active form for us. Starts with the liver, then goes to the kidneys there. Vitamin D has tons of functions. Take a look at what we have here. You've got things like steroid hormones, gene transcription, especially bone homeostasis, cells, skin, and immunity. Excuse me. The sources that I want you to be familiar with, and there can be a lot here, is going to be like liver, egg yolk, and milk. Those will be some great sources of vitamin D. I just want to make another point, and I'm looking for all of you in the chat to help me out here, so let me know. Right now, we have a newborn in my house, real little baby, okay? And we have to supplement them with vitamin D. Why do you all think we have to supplement the baby with vitamin D? Well, what would you guess as to why we're supplementing vitamin D for our baby? What would you guess? And by the way, don't be afraid to be wrong. It's okay to be wrong. I'm wrong often. But what would be the reason, folks? Why would we do that? Absolutely. Yep, RD to B Shakel, absolutely, because the bones are growing. So we definitely have a high demand for vitamin D during this time. That's definitely right. Absolutely. And one other reason that I just want you all just to keep in the back of your head is keeping in mind that breast milk itself doesn't have a lot of vitamin D. Okay, breast milk, so we're doing breastfeeding or nursing, breast milk does not have a lot of vitamin D. And so what occurs is we have to supplement for these babies a lot of the time because they're not getting enough vitamin D from breast milk. So just something to keep in the back of your head as you kind of think about vitamin D here. For deficiencies, children who are deficient in vitamin D will end up with rickets, and in adults, it's known as osteomalacia, which is that softening of the bones that they see. Yep, good. Priscilla 3820, they can't produce it. Well, it's kind of the thought. If we're talking about mom, for instance, here, Priscilla, what we should think of is that the mom is feeding the baby, but maybe not all of the vitamin D that mom has can get to baby. Or perhaps, like a lot of people, mom herself could be deficient in vitamin D and then she can't give enough to baby. That could also be a factor. But yeah, and you make a good point. They can't produce it. Yeah, probably not going to be able to produce it so well when they're that young either. So we have to supplement it, especially with breastfeeding. With fortified formula, wouldn't be a problem though. Very good questions here, folks. Love this. Okay. Great, great. I don't see any other questions on that one. Let's keep rocking along. Vitamin E, a third one we're going to go through here. Vitamin E is digested, facilitated diffusion in the jejunum. Then it goes to the liver, into the cells. Okay. The functions of vitamin E are that it mainly serves as an antioxidant. That's the main thing that it serves as. It's a great antioxidant for us, and it helps to protect our cells. In general, should help you out with things like immunity and should be pretty good for that. For sources, we're going to have things like oils, nuts, whole grains, and leafy greens. I always think of with vitamin E, I think of the fact that it is fat soluble. So it makes sense to me as to why there's probably some fats that are sources of it, right? So especially seed oils, they're an awesome source of vitamin E, nuts, whole grains, etc. Especially whole grains, because in whole grains, if you're using the whole grain, there's still some fat in that grain, and that can be where that vitamin E is housed in there too. So that's kind of how we're getting it from there. For deficiencies here, sorry that's getting cut off, we can end up with a hemolytic anemia, neurological issues. I would say and preface that in the American diet, I don't think a vitamin E deficiency is very common, mostly because we have so much seed oils in food products already. So it kind of makes sense that, it's not going to be the most consistent deficiency we see. Okay. All right, RDs to be. What are some questions you might have on vitamin E? Going too fast, going too slow, hopefully feeling good. Good. Just looking in the chat for questions. Again, don't be shy. I know it's always tough to kind of look like the person of like, maybe I don't know as much as I should on this, but that's what the purpose of this session is. And I always promise you that if you have a question on it, chances are another student has the same question and feels the same way as you. Okay. Looking great on vitamin E, everyone. Let's get along to vitamin K. It's so fun. Yeah. To me, I'm going to go back really quick for facilitated diffusion. So, just to remind you all a little bit when it comes to this, the passive diffusion, that means that whatever it is, water, salt, glucose, it can easily just move through that cell membrane, right? Through that cell membrane without much resistance. So that's the passive, meaning easy. Facilitated diffusion means we can go through this membrane, but we need a buddy. Okay. We need a little marker buddy. We're going to use Dexter here. Okay. We need a little marker buddy to pass through the membrane. Okay. And facilitated. I always think of it like you can't get into the club, so that you need like uh, your friend who gets in the club really easily, and they're kind of help facilitating your getting into the club, if that makes sense. That's how I always think of it. And then active transport, which is that third type, that's the one that just requires ATP. So you don't need a buddy or anything, but you do need energy to get into the club. You got to pay someone, basically. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question there, Tamia. Good. Cameron Crockett, 3586. No, all the daily intakes? I would say no. What I would say is there are a few that I like to make note of. For instance, like I always say that I would want you to know the daily intakes for iron for healthy adults and probably someone who's pregnant. I think that's a great thing to know. I think knowing our folate intake for a pregnant woman is important, for instance, because it's so specific to that population, for instance. But do we need to know every intake for vitamin A, vitamin D, et cetera? I don't believe so. No, I think the questions are going to be much more surrounding around what are the sources, what's the deficiency, things like that. Great question there. All right, excellent. I love these. Keep them coming, folks. Coming. Okay, let's get. Let me know in the chat if you, when you were a dietetic intern, let me know if you did any warfarin educations or Coumadin educations at all. I'm curious at all. For vitamin K, our last fat soluble, it's going to be digested, active transport in the jejunum, or passive transport in the colon. It can do either or here. It then goes to the liver and then to the cells. The functions of vitamin K are blood clotting. Clotting, edit for us here. We're going to call this K for clotting. Okay. So think of blood clotting when it comes to vitamin K. It does a job to help our blood to clot. It helps with some bone formation and turnover, and it helps with some of our enzymes here too. Sources are going to be leafy greens and kiwi. Okay. Leafy greens and kiwi. And I know I could add way more on that list. For instance, like, you know, for leafy greens, I'm going to say like cabbage, kale, mustard greens, turnip greens. All those are going to be high sources of vitamin K. Kiwi is my favorite fruit because it starts with a K and it seems easy to remember. But just to say that we're going to think of a lot of those leafy greens when it comes to this. And then for the deficiency, it's going to be excessive bleeding. I want to explain this a bit on here too. So RD to be Shakel. Yes, when you worked as a diet tech, very cool, Shakel. It's cool you have that experience to kind of bring. I'd love to hear about that. Yes, in a nursing home, Priscilla, but that was really interesting to do some nursing home educations. And I'll bet there was a few of those patients who said, well, I don't eat those foods anyway, so that's not much of a problem. Yep. Yep. Jalissa Moore jumping in a little bit was kind of the recommendation. So let's all make sure we just understand this well. So when a patient, kind of back this up, if a patient is on warfarin or Coumadin, it's a medication that prevents them from clotting. Okay. Some people, their blood clots too much. That clot can dislodge and they can end up with strokes, deep vein thrombosis, lots of issues for the vascular system, right? So the doctor puts them on a medication to bring that clotting down. But if I eat lots of vitamin K, what's it going to do? It's going to make my clotting go up, right? So we struggle with Coumadin and warfarin because a patient will be put on a medication and their clotting goes like this. Then they start eating leafy greens and their clotting goes like this. So that's why we just, with a warfarin or Coumadin education, we're normally saying eat consistent amounts of vitamin K throughout the day. Or like Jalissa said, how sometimes they'll tell a doctor may say, eat no vitamin K, right? And I think that's people just do that because it's easy to manage because they're like, they don't want to, you don't want medication variations, I guess. But I have worked with patients who we could find consistent vitamin K intake and consistent medication intake. I found the balance with that before. Okay. Now, does that all make sense to all of us as to how warfarin, Coumadin factors in with vitamin K here? Does it seem like that's a good point there? Okay. Hopefully, you're feeling good here, everyone. So I'm just going to give it a couple seconds, let that digest, see if there's any more questions on that before we start getting into the water solubles here. Great. Might pick up my pace a little bit just to keep us on our time with everyone. And I want to get to those questions. So, okay, doing great, RDs to be. Vitamin B1, thiamine. Everyone, why did I put this big alcohol glass here? Let me know in the chat if you can think of why I put this in here. Thiamine is going to be digested, passive slash active transport in the jejunum, meaning it has both options. If I needed to get a lot more thiamine in, I could actively transport it in. Or if it's just my day to day thiamine, it's probably passively absorbing. And then thiamine will go to the cells. Okay, very good. Excellent, excellent. The functions of thiamine is it's essential to energy metabolism. Check this out. In biochem, I have a decent lesson I've done for the podcast talking a bit about biochemistry. So if you haven't checked that out, do. But remember, whenever we have our pyruvate wants to go into the Krebs cycle, right? Pyruvate wants to go into the Krebs cycle as acetyl CoA. In order for it to do that, it requires thiamine. So for pyruvate to become acetyl CoA, you have to have thiamine. So that's our problem. If you do not have thiamine, you got a big problem because you basically can't make acetyl CoA. And that's no good, right? We need that acetyl CoA for so much energy production. So it makes sense as to why you feel a little crummy if you're deficient in it. For the sources here, pork is the best source. It's always been known as the best source. Liver, fish, fortified grains, like fortified cereals, fortified breads. Those are all going to be good sources there too. And for deficiencies, berry, and Wernicke's encephalopathy. Let's talk about these. So Cameron jumped in the chat to say most alcoholics are very deficient in thiamine. That's absolutely correct, and that's what I was looking for there, Cameron, because a lot of the times alcohol will interfere with the absorption of thiamine, as well as most people who are abusing alcohol really don't eat well. So I've always thought it's a combination of poor absorption and also the fact that poor intake as to why they're deficient in thiamine. So the deficiencies that can happen commonly to these patients is beriberi, which means weakness, weakness. It always happens in the lower legs, is what they see. So I always think thiamine and I think about weak thighs. Okay. That's what I think of with beriberi, thiamine, and weak thighs. And then Wernicke's encephalopathy. Sorry, that got cut off. If you want to see that, let me back that up. Use me. Again, this won't be a problem in the future. With Wernicke's encephalopathy, it's kind of also wet brain. It's mostly just a confusion. It's a confusion you're having while you're usually in the hospital because you're detoxing too. Okay. So there's thiamine, vitamin B1. What questions might you all have in the chat? Don't forget to drop them in because I want to see them. Okay. Looking good. I'll keep advancing, but I'll keep an eye on questions if I see any here. Because we're going to have vitamin B2, riboflavin. Riboflavin here is going to be digested, go through facilitated diffusion in the jejunum. It'll then go to the cells. I added this note here, and I think it's really important for riboflavin as we learn about it. Riboflavin is destroyed by UV light. So UV light, once it penetrates riboflavin, it'll break it down, which is no good. We don't want that to happen. For functions of riboflavin, is it has the function of energy metabolism. Okay. So FADH2, if you've heard me talk about FADH2, remember FADH2 is that step in biochemistry. It's the step in energy metabolism, and it's a byproduct, right? It's a byproduct. And that byproduct of FADH2, it's not ATP yet. It's not money yet, as I say. FADH2 is like a check that I'm going to go take to the bank to get cashed out. That's what it is. It's energy, but it's just not readily available. So riboflavin, the F, is what is the F in FADH2. So that's kind of cool. For the sources here, we have milk, liver, meat, fish, and fortified grains. And Priscilla 3820 jumped in the chat here with us and brought up a great point. Something about milk being in a glass regarding this. And what you're saying there, Priscilla, is that milk is usually in a opaque container or a dark container too, right? Because the milk that's in our stores is always under UV light. And so if it sits under UV light all the time, that riboflavin is going to break down, and that's no good. So that's why we put our milk in those opaque containers, so that riboflavin does not kind of break down on us there. Great point to bring up there. Okay. For our deficiencies, for the deficiencies to know, you're going to have to know that chelosis is one, chelosis, which means cracked lips, and stomatitis, which is inflammation of the mouth. You can also end up with a magenta tongue. Okay. My little tips and tricks for riboflavin is I always think of talking with a lisp. Okay. If I say riboflavin, it's going to make you think of your mouth, right? In your mouth is a lot of the deficiencies that you see with riboflavin. So it fits pretty well to think riboflavin, think of the mouth, think of the tongue, and think of those things all together there. Okay. That's always been a helpful trick for me to see about remembering this vitamin here. All right. Looking for questions if any pop up on this, but it looks like you're all doing because you're all very bright. That's why. Okay. Vitamin B3, niacin. Niacin. I put these 4 Ds here, and we're going to talk a little bit more as to why I did that. Niacin is going to be digested, facilitated diffusion in the jejunum, and then it's going to go to the cells. The functions of niacin is it assists in the metabolism of glucose, amino acid, fats. It goes into energy, DNA synthesis, and specific to energy, just the same way we talked about how F2 corresponds to riboflavin, NADH corresponds to niacin. Just like we talked about before, what we're seeing is NADH is like a check that we're going to take to the bank to cash out later, right? So it's a check we're going to take to the bank later. That's what NADH is. Okay, so sources of niacin. Here's what we got meats, fortified grains, peanuts, milk, rice. For whatever reason, when I think of niacin and its sources, I always think of like a peanut butter sandwich with a glass of milk. That might sound gross to you, but for some reason, it's something I do. It'll be a peanut butter sandwich with a glass of milk. I've got my fortified grains. I've got my peanut butter. I've got my glass of milk. Look at me. I've got all the niacin in the world that I need. Good. Here's our deficiencies. Bring that up a little bit so you can see that. If you can even, I'm going to guess we can't end up seeing it here. I'll bring that up so we can all see that a little better. Okay. We're going to talk pellagra here. Pellagra. So the 4Ds of pellagra, I know you've heard this before. What are the 4Ds? Well, I gave them to you right here. Maybe without looking, you can tell me and say it out loud with me. The 4Ds of pellagra will be death, dermatitis, dementia, and diarrhea. Those are the 4Ds of pellagra that we encounter as a result of a niacin deficiency. Okay. Very good. Very good. We're rocking along with these vitamins here. Keeping a lookout on the chat in case it pops up here, everyone. Now let's get into vitamin B5, which is pantothenic acid. Pantothenic acid. Pantothenic acid is going to be digested, passive and active transport in the jejunum if needed, and then it's going to go to the cells. The functions of vitamin B5 or pantothenic acid is it's actually a part of coenzyme A. Tip here, that's CoA, as in acetyl-CoA. So you can automatically just connect in your mind. Pantothenic acid, vitamin B5, energy metabolism. Now you know it in case it popped up on a question. For sources of vitamin B5, that'd be like meat, liver, kidney, mushrooms, legumes, fortified foods. So a little mix of animal and plant-based products there. And then for deficiencies, it's a little cut off here, but you'll rarely see a deficiency with vitamin B5. It's not very common, especially since it's going to be in most of our fortified foods here. It shouldn't be one that we're going to see a big deficiency in there. Okay. Pyridoxine, vitamin B6. Pyridoxine is going to be digested, passively diffused into the jejunum and the ileum, go to the liver, and then to the cells. The functions are it's needed for the transcription, amino acid and glycogen metabolism, as well as it's used in hormone production, right? This isn't one that I feel like we talk about as much as the other ones. So it's still being one of our major water soluble vitamins here. For the food sources, we're going to see meat, fish, beans, potatoes. These will all be good sources of pyridoxine. And then for your deficiencies, you're going to see microcytic anemia, dermatitis, and some of those mouth symptoms that we saw with those earlier kind of vitamins we talked about. As a quick pause, I need help from the chat really quick. Can you all remind me, microcytic anemia, what is that all about? Is that describing the red blood cell? What is that describing? Microcytic anemia. What's that all about, everyone? Micro. Hmm. Yeah. Yep. Very good. Very good. I see a couple of mentions in the chat here. This is all very excellent. Microcytic anemia. Remember, it's the type of anemia where you have very small, itty bitty cells. Okay. Your cells are small. Okay. So microcytic anemias can be caused by an iron deficiency, like Tamia Williams told us here. It could also be caused by pyridoxine as well. It could be another thing that could contribute to a microcytic anemia. So sometimes people think they're iron deficient because they have microcytic anemia, but actually they're just deficient in vitamin B6. So kind of a funny thing that can happen there. Good, good. Cameron's ahead of me here. Looking good. Excellent, everyone. All right, locking through. We're almost through our list here, and then we'll have some questions to do together. Vitamin B7 is biotin. Again, one of those that you're like, oh man, I know it's a vitamin, but honestly, I don't talk about it with some of the other ones. It's kind of like that. It's going to be digested, facilitative transport in the jejunum to the cells and then to the liver for storage. The functions of biotin is that it helps with fatty acid synthesis, pyruvate to oxaloacetate. I've always remembered as biotin being good for my skin and my hair. I think I had a L'Oreal shampoo one time that had biotin in it. I'm not really sure, but I always remember seeing it and being like, hair, skin, biotin. Very good. For the food sources of biotin, egg yolk is a great one. Nuts, seeds, milk, dairy, and meats. A lot of fat type things I'm noticing kind of through here. And then for deficiency of biotin, not the ones we need to be most familiar with, but just so you know, dermatitis, glossitis, muscle pain could be some possible deficiencies that could occur with this one here. Good, good. Excellent. Vitamin B9, folate, another just a big player here. Folate is going to be digested. It will go through active transport in the jejunum to the cells and then to the liver for storage. Its functions, you know what it is, neural tube development. So, especially in pregnant women who are growing babies, neural tube development of the fetus is really dependent on their folate intake. That's why it's always in a prenatal vitamin, for instance. It also contributes to amino acid metabolism and helps with the conversion of methionine to homocysteine as well in the body. And then the sources, I want you to think of fortified grains, fortified juices, and foliage. Okay. Folate, foliage. Think of those two together folate, foliage. So that'll be those leafy greens in there. Those will all be good sources of folate. For deficiencies, we'll have neural tube defects, macrocytic anemia, diarrhea, and fatigue. So make note, we just talked about a microcytic anemia. Now we're talking about a macrocytic anemia. Big, big, big cells here, right? Very good. All right. Our last one, oh, two more to go through here. Vitamin B12, and then we'll get into some questions here together. So vitamin B12, the biggest ones we ever talk about. Take note here with the metabolism here, folks. Vitamin B12 is going to combine with intrinsic factor in your stomach. Okay, intrinsic factor is that kind of protein it'll bind to, and it needs this. It needs intrinsic factor. You cannot skip this step, it needs it. It can go to active transport in the ileum. Okay, so make note that we've talked about the jejunum a ton today, a ton. But with the ileum, that's very specific to vitamin B12. Then it'll go to the tissues and then to the liver for storage. The functions of it is it's so important for the production of red blood cells, bone marrow, and nervous tissue as well. And here will be your sources. As you can notice, it's a lot of animal based foods. I know nutritional yeast can also be a good source, as a good vegan source of vitamin B12, but especially vegans, some vegetarians. I don't know. I think you could get it if you're vegetarian, but if you are vegan, it can be very difficult to get adequate amounts of B12. And then for a deficiency of B12, you're going to end up with a macrocytic anemia. Big, big, big cells here, everyone. Huge cells. Okay. Microcytic was tiny, macrocytic's like this. This macrocytic anemia is also known as a pernicious anemia. Pernicious anemia. And that pernicious anemia, it's only special to B12. Okay. That is B12 all the way. So if you have a folate deficiency, you would not have a pernicious anemia. Mhm. Yeah, so Priscilla 3820, what kind of surgery do you have to supplement vitamin B12 with again? So let me make sure I answer this correctly for you here. One thing that I've always known is for some patients that have a short bowel syndrome. Okay, let's start with that. Short bowel syndrome is where we've taken the small intestine from this size to like this size. Okay, we've cut out some section of the small intestine. Now, sometimes people will get their ileum removed. Okay, so if you have your ileum removed, you cannot absorb vitamin B12. It's I'm not going to say it's impossible, but you're going to struggle a lot. Okay. So if you have a ileectomy where your ileum is removed, you're missing the whole area to absorb your B12. And that's not good. Typically, what I've seen and what I've read in, through text a lot is that a patient who doesn't have an ileum usually will get intravenous or IV B12 directly in there that'll go to the cells. So it doesn't have to go through the absorption and binding with intrinsic factor. It can go to the cells through the IV supplemental form. Um, Priscilla 3820, let me know if that fit well with the surgery that you were thinking of. That's what I've really heard of is any case in which your ileum is going to be removed. Yeah, that's going to be one reason. Ugh. Michael, for Roux-en-Y, would B12 be the primary B vitamin of concern? Well, let's think of this a little bit here, Michael. So, with the Roux-en-Y, typically we are bypassing part of the stomach, right? So, I don't know if B12 is our biggest concern in this case, and here's why. We're bypassing part of the stomach, and sometimes we're connecting it to the jejunum or part of the duodenum, right? With that, what I want you to imagine is the ileum still active? If the ileum is still active, it's fair game and you're probably going to absorb your B12 okay. But then again, Michael, now that you bring up the point, the stomach will not have intrinsic factor as well because you don't get as much time in the stomach. So let me just back that up to say, I think in a Roux-en-Y, you might want to supplement B12 because your stomach might not have as much intrinsic factor and you might struggle to absorb things. But all in all, you still have your ileum, so there's still a chance. Does that make sense, Michael? Hopefully that wasn't too extensive there. Okay, looking good, folks. Okay. Good. All right. So we're going to finish up with vitamin C here, and then we're going to head over to our questions that everyone's waiting on. With vitamin C, it's going to be digestive, active, and passively transported into the jejunum and then to the cells. The function of vitamin C is it functions as an antioxidant for collagen production in our skin, iron absorption, and immunity. The sources are fruits and vegetables. And for the deficiencies, I put a little pirate here. You can barely see this little pirate. Doesn't look like he's a very happy looking pirate, if you ask me. But what happens is a lot of people that are out to sea or who don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, they end up getting scurvy. So scurvy is like a bleeding gums that you get as a result of a vitamin C deficiency. Petechia, if I'm saying that right, is like these red kind of pinpoint needle spots that end up on your skin. And you always have some poor wound healing with vitamin C because, again, it's so necessary for that collagen production. If you're not getting the vitamin C, it's going to be a struggle there. Good. All right. All right, folks. Yeah, no problem, Cameron. I'll go back a little bit. I'm going to go vitamin B5 here since we had a question on that. See what I can answer for you. There you go, Cameron. There you go. So there's that pantothenic acid there we were talking about a little bit. Just as we're taking a pause before we get into our questions here, I just wanted to say I'm going to plan to upload this to YouTube later. So if you want to come back, watch it. If you want to double check with something with me, you can feel free to. But I should have this posted in the future so other people can watch it if they want to. Very good. Looks like we're doing good. All right, RDs to be. Now it's question time. If you've ever listened to me before, You know that I'm extremely question focused, really question focused because I feel it's the best thing that shows that you can apply your knowledge on the test. And I've met so many smart and highly intelligent RDs to be before that know everything, they just have trouble applying it to a question. With a question, I want you to change your mindset to be more strategy focused. So it's you versus the question, and you need to do everything you can to beat this question. So, what I like to use is a really common strategy called process of elimination. Go through this question. Excuse me. I want to do this question together. It's going to be really, really easy, but I wanted just to start with this together. With process of elimination, what you will do is you will write A, B, C, and D on that whiteboard that you get for the exam or scratch paper, whatever you have. What I do is I write that A, B, C, and D. And on the exam, I wrote A, B, C, and D on my whiteboard 125 times. And that's not a lie to you. I wrote it so much that when I erased it, my hands were black and blue. Okay. Because I erased it all with the back of my arm because they didn't give me an eraser of any kind. So, process of elimination works extremely well. I know it's helped many students that I've worked with before. And it helps to have a strategy to apply to a question. And I say, why not? If it can put us at a good odds of getting a question right, let's do it. Let's start out with this first question. Which of the following is a water soluble vitamin? A, vitamin A, B, vitamin D, C, vitamin K3, or D, vitamin C? So on my board, I have A, B, C, and D. I start with the first answer, vitamin A. Well, vitamin A, I know, is a fat soluble vitamin. So already, right off the bat, I know vitamin A is not a good answer. And you know what I do? I cross it out. I get it out of there so that I don't consider it ever again, unless I really need to. For B, vitamin D. I know vitamin D is also a fat soluble vitamin. So guess what? I'm going to get rid of that thing. Look at C, vitamin K3. That's also a fat soluble vitamin. That cannot be my answer. That leaves me with only one answer at the end, and that's vitamin C. It appears that D is the best answer, and D is our best answer here because vitamin C is a water soluble vitamin. Those other three that we talked about here, vitamin A, D, and K, those are all fat soluble vitamins. Okay. So use the process of elimination to help you to get rid of one answer, two answers, even three answers to help you come up with the best fit here. Okay. All right. Very good. And if you want to, post your answers in the chat. You can drop them in there. Just try to stick with the process with me so you do take it, a little slower than you might be used to in practice. Post them in there. By the way, don't be afraid of being wrong. That's one big thing I want to emphasize. This is a positive group. We're positive people. No one's going to get on you for getting a question wrong ever. I've done it a million times. So it's okay. And it helps that we can get there sometimes because then I can know how I can help people more. Why didn't you understand it? What can I help clarify there? So just be open. Let's look at number 2 here. Risk of toxicity is most closely related to blank. Now, we didn't talk about this much today, but I want to see what knowledge you might already have on this concept. So I write A, B, C, and D on my whiteboard. All right. Vitamin A. Vitamin A. Okay, I like vitamin A as an answer, and I want to put a little check mark next to vitamin A, but I'm not going to just say that's my final answer. I need to read every answer first. I remember vitamin A because I know it's fat soluble. It can get stuck in the fat cells. I know that pregnant people, when they're taking vitamin A supplements, they can't do like a vitamin A like face cream, for instance, because you can end up with toxicity as a result there. I'm going to hold on to A. B, vitamin D. Is it the most close for toxicity? I'm not sure. Maybe I'll put a little question mark by B for right now. C, vitamin B3. Okay. Vitamin B3, that's going to be a water soluble vitamin. and I could become toxic in it, but I feel like a lot of the times with it being water soluble, I should be able to pee that vitamin out, no problem. I'm going to rule out answer C. And then answer D is vitamin B6, which is also a water soluble vitamin. I think I'm going to choose to get rid of that one as well because, again, with it being water soluble, I think my chances I can pee it out probably pretty good. So this just leaves me with A and B. A was my best answer. B, I didn't feel so good with. So I would say A is my best fit, and A is going to be the correct answer for that one there. Okay. So for risk of toxicity, the most closely related to vitamin A, that'll be the one that'll end up most closely related to toxicity there. All right. Good. And if anyone has questions about those as we go through them, remember, just tell me to speak out. Happy to help you. Good. Number 3, absorption of fat soluble vitamins primarily occurs in the A, the duodenum, B, the jejunum, C, the colon, or D, the stomach. It's gonna be a tough one. All right, let's write out A, B, C, and D on our sheets here. For A, the duodenum. Well, the duodenum, I always think of the duodenum as absorbing a lot of minerals, especially things like iron, calcium, zinc, some of the other ones I can't think of. And so, really, would the duodenum be known for fat soluble vitamins? I'd rule that one out. I don't like the duodenum. I'm getting it out of here. B, the jejunum, the longest part of the small intestine. We've talked about it a good amount today. I'd say the jejunum's a good answer. I'd like to hold on to that one. C, the colon. Well, the colon won't be absorbing a lot of vitamins, especially not a lot of fat soluble ones. So, except maybe vitamin K, of course. But no, I don't think the colon would be a good fit. I'm going to rule that one out. And then D, the stomach. I can't think of any of vitamins that the stomach really absorbs. So I would get rid of that one, leaving me with answer B as my best fit for number 3 here. Good. Good. Any questions on that one? Great answers in the chat, everyone. Way to put yourself out there. Yeah, Priscilla 3820. I would say duodenum is usually minerals a lot more. We can absorb some other things and keep in mind, like for instance, the small intestine, we can absorb lots of things in lots of areas, but we're saying primarily where is stuff absorbed? Yeah, minerals will primarily be in the duodenum, vitamins will primarily be in the jejunum. Good. Okay. I think I got one or two more for us here. A vegetarian with a milk allergy would be most likely to be would most likely be deficient in A, vitamin C and phosphorus, B, vitamin A and D, C, iron and vitamin E, or D, vitamin B12 and B9. All right, so let's see which ones we can get rid of here. Vegetarian with a milk allergy. Okay. For A, vitamin C and phosphorus. What do you all think? Would you recommend I keep answer A or get rid of it? I'm going to let you all make the decision for me. What do you think? Should I get rid of it or keep it? Okay, Shaquelle seems to want me to get rid of it. So does Priscilla and Jalissa. Okay, all right. So we're going to get rid of A. A is out of here. It's not a good fit. Thanks for making that call for me. B, vitamin A and D. I don't think that would be a good fit. I feel like a vegetarian with a milk allergy could still get vitamin A and D from other sources. I think I'm going to get rid of that one too. C, iron and vitamin E. It could be with the vegetarian, but then again, milk doesn't really have a lot of iron anyway. So why would we be too concerned about them getting iron? They could get iron from other sources. I'm going to rule out answer C. D is vitamin B12 and B9. I agree with all of you. I would say answer D is our best fit for this one here. A vegetarian with a milk allergy would be most likely deficient in B12 and B9 as well. Very good. Okay. Let's do one more here. We'll kind of wrap up our night here in just a moment. Increased plasma pyruvate is an indication of A, riboflavin deficiency, B, thiamine deficiency, C, iron deficiency, and D, pyridoxine deficiency. Okay, so let's think through this, folks. We have increased plasma pyruvate, okay? So think of it like this. In some way, we talked about a vitamin today that helps pyruvate become acetyl CoA. Remember, we talked about how there's one vitamin who really helps us to make that pyruvate and make it into acetyl CoA, right? We talked about that today. So, what's going on here is that when I don't have that vitamin, my pyruvate is building it up. It's going high. You know why? It can't become acetyl CoA. Okay, it can't become acetyl CoA. So, let's see what factors in here. For A, riboflavin deficiency. Well, the thing with A is that riboflavin corresponded to FADH2, which is important for energy metabolism, but it didn't have much to do with the acetyl CoA part of it. So to me, I'm not going to confuse myself. I'm going to rule that one out of there. B, thiamine deficiency. Now, this might be a good answer here because I do remember thiamine being really important for that initial step of pyruvate becoming acetyl CoA. Feel like that might be a good fit, and I'd like to hold on to it here. C, iron deficiency. Well, iron is important for a lot of things, but it's not really doing much for my pyruvate to acetyl CoA. I'm getting that out of there. And D, pyridoxine deficiency. Ooh, that's tough. Pyridoxine does have to do with the. No, that's pantothenic acid. Okay, maybe D, I'm a little questionable on. I'm not sure. But if I was between B as in boy and D as in dog, I'm going to go with B as my best fit because I know that thiamine is essential for the conversion of pyruvate to acetyl CoA. So that has to be our best fit here, RDs to be. And it is our best fit as we go through that. Excellent, excellent, excellent lesson, everyone. Good. So we are at the top of the hour here. I want to be kind of just cognizant of your time for all of you here. Um, we've got 1 or 2 minutes. If you could just let me know in the chat, did you like this session? Would you do more of these if I offered something like this? Is there anything you would recommend I bring to it? I'm happy to adjust. I've done lots of live classes before, but doing things on YouTube is just a little bit different. So if there's ways I can improve and help you all out, I'd be happy to do so. Good. Yeah, Cameron, thanks for joining us. Thank you, Jalissa. It's very kind words. I appreciate that. Shakel, I'm gonna RD to be Shakel, I'm gonna see about future on these with the holidays coming up and stuff. I don't want to block myself down. I'm hoping to do weekly sessions coming up in the future, and will announce those once I have those kind of up and running. Having a baby around has kind of made things a little tough at the moment, so we're kind of balancing that whole act now. But I would hope to do these sessions again in the future and find a day that works for all the students I get to work with. Good. Any other questions, concerns before we go today? Good. So I'm glad you liked how I went through things and making it easy to understand. Good. That's what I'm here for. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. It was a pleasure. It's the first time I've held a live session. So to have you all join me, sit in and listen is very special. And I appreciate you all cooperating and sitting to listen. Remember, subscribe if you would, get up on that new content. And as always, happy studying, RD to be. I'll talk to you later.